Hi, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who plays bluegrass. Hey everybody, welcome back to another week. This is another food for thought episode where instead of playing a tune, we just kind of have a discussion about something that's going on around playing music. And this is something that's been in my head all week and something I've been thinking about a lot, and it's sort of cropped up in various conversations. But rather than start with the question, I just want you to stop for a second and think, if this wasn't a podcast and if I was in a room with you and maybe, I don't know, half a dozen other people, and I turned to you and said, hey, pick up your instrument and play me Whiskey Before Breakfast. Everybody knows Whiskey Before Breakfast. You pick it up and you play me a version, and we move on to the next person and they'd play it. Chances are it'd be a bit different. And then the next person would play it and it'd be different again. And it may be that a fiddle player plays it differently from a mandolin player who plays it differently from a guitarist. It may also be that there's regional variations and somebody who's a Texas fiddler plays it different from a fiddler from North Carolina. It might also be that you've picked it up from a different book or a different DVD, or, you know, there's so many reasons, or just your favourite player's version. But the thing is that I find fascinating about bluegrass as a sort of a guy from the UK who's not grown up with it, is starting to play it. How do you know what the tune is? How does Whiskey Before Breakfast actually go? I don't know, is the honest answer. And I play it differently on mandolin than I play it on guitar. I probably play it differently on guitar on a Wednesday than I do on a Tuesday. And I've listened to it a lot and listened to different people's versions, and there's different versions in books. And it's one of the things I find endlessly fascinating about bluegrass, is there is really no single definitive version of a lot of the tunes. Obviously, with some of the things, Bill Monroe tunes or whatever, then you can go back to his recordings of them. But with Whiskey Before Breakfast or Billy in the Low Ground or Cherokee Shuffle, there's not a right or wrong version. And so, like, at first I found that really weird. How do I know when I'm playing this right? And then I sort of realised, well, I can have a version of this same as everybody else can. And yeah, it's something that I find endlessly fascinating. I wondered how you guys feel, how you ended up with the version you play. Because one of the things that I think is really important about the podcast, about Bluegrass Jam Along, is that there's no tab. I'm not saying these are definite versions of the tune. I'm playing you my version of the tune and you can play along. And mine might be heavily borrowed from somebody else's. And so whatever version you've learned from whichever book, whichever source, whichever teacher, family member you've learned the tune from, should work. And that's how jams work. But where did your version come from? And I'd really like people to sort of come over to the Bluegrass Jam Along Facebook or Instagram and join in the conversation. I want to know how you learn a tune, how you decide what the tune goes like, how you pick your version, and if that's changed from the version you learned, if you've got a different version now than you did when you first started playing. I find this endlessly interesting. I'm going to play you a little bit of the interview I did with Bryan Sutton a while ago where we talk about this, just because it might prompt some thoughts. Here's what we had to say. Yeah, and it is that idea of, even with the tune itself, what the core tune is. Like, coming to this as a British guy who didn't grow up around bluegrass or much American music at first at all, just hearing these tunes and starting to try and learn them and go, well, what is the actual tune? And everybody plays it slightly differently. Each book's got a different version in it. And at first that's quite frustrating, quite intimidating, and in time it's massively liberating, because there's scope for your version of Whiskey Before Breakfast and somebody else's version.
Yeah, which is, again, what I love about the fact that when I say, literally with a song like Whiskey Before Breakfast, you have 100 guitar players, you're going to hear 100 versions of Whiskey Before Breakfast. But the reason that it's good to notice that is that what you can gather from all that information is that there is still something similar. And what is that? What is that core kind of connective scaffolding or structure, or the essential sequence of notes is what I call it, that ultimately define that from some other song. And when you can locate that, again, it's like discovering the skeleton. And then you can kind of, throw different bits of this and that and the other thing and on top of it. And again, that's back to the improvisational challenges, to feel these goals hit, where you sort of feel you, but also feel the song being communicated. And that's, for me, that's kind of the target, at least with fiddle tune improvisation, to feel like I am kind of informed by that melody, but also completely engaging as much as I can, and that's this sort of healthy, reactive, improvisational mindset. It's not easy, but it's worth working on.
Cool. So that's just a little snippet from that. If you want the whole interview, go back and check out episode 100, where we talk about that and all sorts of other stuff as well. But it's really interesting because this week the tune I posted was Black Mountain Rag, and as soon as I posted it, I put a link on a forum, and somebody, a girl called Libby, who is on the same Artist Works site course as me with Bryan Sutton. Hi Libby, if you're listening. I said, yeah, I'm doing Black Mountain Rag this week. And she said, ooh, A or D? I was like, wow, yeah, great. It's the first tune where somebody's questioned which key, because you can play it in either. And so, like, some tunes aren't just about how they vary. They could be in different keys completely or different structures completely. So, yeah, that's sort of the thought for the week. I want to know how you learn a tune, how you pick your version. Have you got a book you go to? Does your teacher teach you versions? Is it you take them from people's recordings, people you've played with? Did your grandpa play a version that you've learned and has been handed down? I'd love to know. So yeah, come over and say hello on Facebook or Instagram. There's links in the show notes, and I love chatting about this stuff, and I want to hear what you guys think. I want to know what your experiences are, and if you've got any tips, any great sources for stuff, or just, you cobble bits together as you go. I'd love to hear. So yeah, come and say hello. That's it for this week. I will speak to you again next time. Happy picking. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, making some of the finest guitars and mandolins in the world since the 1970s. Visit collingsguitars.com and find out why.